Hey, welcome back to Your Gift podcast. Tonight, we're getting back with Dave, and we have another special guest, Krista Campisano. Um, we've known each other for a while now because our kids have played sports together for a while. But most recently, probably within the last 3 or 4 months, I've noticed more and more of the posts that you've been posting on Facebook about some of the work that you've been doing. And it appears to be a lot of different, whether it's to help out low income families or students in a lot of the schools or the students in the school that you teach and things like that. But just what we wanted to do is talk to you about what you're doing, the organizations that you're a part of, and maybe even how other people can get a part of those same organizations to help out.
Mm-hmm. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. I have a passion for what I do. I love talking about my career and my job. I've done this for this is my 22nd year. So I've done the same thing for about 20 years. And I don't know if you ever get good at it, but you certainly learn the tricks of the trade. And my position, I have been working with low income families. And so everybody is at the poverty level or below. So a family of four is making, now they've raised it just a little bit because of COVID, but they're making 27,000 or less. So if you think about minimum wage workers, somebody who's making $7.25, that equals about, I always do, the way I do it in my head, if you make $10 an hour, then you make about 10,000 a year. So, $7 an hour is anywhere from 7 to 10,000 a year. And that number may be off just a little bit, but to know that people really struggle. And middle class and upper class people, if you happen to fall in that category, you're blessed. And you don't really realize, the word privilege gets thrown around a lot, but you don't really realize, and some people don't have a lot of sympathy for families that are low income. And so we can kind of chat about that in a little bit. But my job is called Family Resource Center Coordinator. And what I do, I work for Jefferson County Public Schools. I'm a public school employee. I get the Kentucky teacher retirement, just like Indiana. They have the Indiana retirement. I get that same benefit from the government. So I'm a state employee. But what's different about me is the state of Kentucky is one of only 4 or 5 states. It keeps growing every year. In fact, I've gone several times out of the state to speak to other people, other legislators who are trying to, set up a system similar to what Kentucky has. And the Family Resource Centers were established when CARA came out, which is the Education Reform Act in Kentucky. And that was in 1991. And what they figured out in Kentucky was we're 49th. Okay, we are 49th in the whole out of 50 states in education, and we got to do something different. Mm-hmm. And so one of the guys went to Connecticut, and they were kind of doing a search around the country for what best practices were. And somebody found out about community-based centers inside the schools. And this legislator took it upon himself and started rolling with it. They created a committee, and to make a long story short, it passed, and it's been around ever since. So this is year 30. For us, we've got 30 years under our belt, and the legislative system pays for it. The state of Kentucky pays for it because it's written into law. So the legislators passed a law outside of CARA that says we will have family resource and youth service centers in Kentucky, and this is what they'll do. And so I have about 6 main components that I'm supposed to meet. For the state, and we do a lot of paperwork and turn it into the state. So there's still a lot of government bureaucracy. I do a lot of paperwork. We make, every time I talk with a family, I put it into a system where we show that we've made a referral, maybe about clothing or food or housing. And we have all these different systems in place to track what we do, keep data. And it's been amazing. I mean, during the pandemic, we've helped, just in Jefferson County alone, they've made like over 250,000 referrals since August. So I'm talking about not even March through summer, but even in August. So I don't want to act like I'm the only person that does this, because there are people around the state, around the country that do it. But in Kentucky, there's 859 coordinators. So, and if you think about, I don't know if you remember ever watching very popular documentary about the Appalachian Mountains and how people today still don't have running water, electricity. They don't have food resources. And what was happening down there that the documentary was about dental care and how they were drinking Mountain Dews and they were giving babies Mountain Dews because that's just what they had to drink that was the cheapest. You know, at the time, buying Mountain Dew and Coke was cheaper than buying milk for a toddler. So they would allow them to drink it. And so they were getting all these really I mean, their teeth were just ruined. And so there was the need for a lot of dental care where they didn't have dentists and doctors that were willing to go down there to those poor, areas of Kentucky and work. And so it was really just like a systematic problem on how to meet the needs of the families and the kids down there. And so that is a lot of how we got popular and got involved, because what we're doing is we have access to the kids at school. And I'm trying to use my video here, but we have access to the kids at school during the school day, and these people from the community all want to come in and help. So how do we bridge those two together? And so the family resource centers really are the bridge. And so what I do, every month is different. My job is different every day. But one of the things that we do is health services. And so we provide dental clinics. We have the dentists come to us, and then we meet those kids' needs at school. They get their dental work done at school.
Wow.
Because, we pick them up and we bring them someplace. Parents don't have transportation. They don't have insurance. And so what happens is they get their teeth fixed at school for free. If they do have insurance, then we use that. If a parent says, "Oh, I really need this because my car's broke down now, and I don't have a way to get them to the dentist this year." So yes, go ahead and do it. So of course there's paperwork involved, but it's pretty simple when it comes to paperwork. So we do vision clinics as well as dental clinics. We do physical clinics, because there are 5 things that you have to turn in before you start school legally. As a kid, before you go to kindergarten, you have to turn in your physical. You have to have an eye exam. You have to have a dental exam. This is Kentucky, of course. You have to have a dental exam. You have to turn in your birth certificate. So, we provide those physicals as well to the families who haven't done that yet. They may not even be connected to insurance. So we work with families on how to get insurance through the government, how to make sure that their kids get on. It doesn't necessarily mean that the adult will get insurance. About 90% of the people I work with, the adults still don't have insurance, but their kids do, which is a good thing for the kids, but I hate it for the adults as well.
Is it just a Medicaid product that they would typically have with the insurance?
Yes. Yeah. It's all through Medicaid. And so when they talk about child health or the Child Health Act, I'm a big fan or component of that, because I see what happens with that money. So it comes down from the feds to the states, and then I'm the person who makes it happen for those kids, and we provide it for them and make sure that they have insurance. And man, it's come in handy so many times. So even things like now, in elementary school, they don't require sports physicals, but in middle and high school, Toby and I have middle school and high school kids now, so we've been through this. But you have to get a sports physical if you want to play sports. Well, they're usually $25 or $30, and sometimes they're not covered under insurance. So that's another resource that we will provide for students. And man, the middle school and high school students, they just take off. So I work with elementary only, so I am K through 5. I've been preschool before too, preschool through 5 and grade, and then youth service centers are located in middle and high schools in the state of Kentucky, and they also work with students. And their job is a little bit different because they do career development and career readiness skills, where at the elementary level, we really don't do that as much, but they really focus on that with the kids. They help the kids find summer jobs. They make those things easy for them. So in the middle and high schools, the kids actually come in and say, "Hey, I heard you could help me find a job." And then it rolls that way. But at the elementary level, I don't have my little kids coming in saying, I need, the only thing they'll come in and ask me for is that they need a change of clothes. They've had an accident and they need a change of clothes. So I do keep a uniform closet, and I post that a lot. I was cracking up because I knew Toby would be looking for me on Facebook. And my post the other day was Walmart this week has had on clearance, they've had uniform shirts, a pack of 2 for $3 on clearance. So I'm like going nuts. I'm like, for $1.50, I can get whatever. I could get a uniform shirt. So that's pretty fantastic. So I've been like asking my friends, go ahead, donate. All you got to do is ship it to my school. So that's been great. I mean, even just from Facebook, I'll have 5 or 6 families, people, friends or acquaintances that'll send uniform clothes to us when we get something like that. And I think that's what Toby has seen.
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff that you see that you're doing, that you could tell there's a lot of passion there about what you're doing. You've been doing it for obviously a long time. Do you have any stories that are uplifting stories, or maybe even some of the ones that keep you going because if you're not available to do these things, this is what's going to happen? That maybe will help drive some of the people to want to help more.
Mm-hmm. Man, it's almost a hard question to answer because it happens quite a bit, and I call them God touches. And I know that may sound silly, but I have I'm Catholic, and I have a very strong faith and in God, and I really feel like that He put me in this position, and that I'm doing His work, and I'm working through Him, and I'm helping people through Him. And what I mean by that is there's been so many times where I worry. I'll lay in bed at night worrying about a family. Like, how in the world am I going to get this home? How am I going to get enough money to get this homeless family out of a hotel and into an apartment or something safe? And Christmas is coming up, or Easter is coming up, summer's coming, and they're in this tiny apartment with, I mean, the most recent one was they were, living in in-town suites on Preston Highway. They had been there about a month. They were out of money for the hotel room, and they just were at wit's end about what they were going to do. And I laid in bed and prayed on it and thought about it. And I swear the next day, about 10 o'clock, I had a guy call me who I hadn't talked to in a couple of years. And he said, I used to help you when you worked at another school. And so-and-so told me that you work at Lure now. And I just want to help a family. I just want to reach out to you and say, what do you need? And I was almost in tears. I was like, well, here's what I got going on. And that guy went over there immediately. He paid their bill for another week. He helped me. He and I worked together to find him an apartment. We talked with the dad to see if dad wanted to live in that area and if that would work out, and if we made the deposit and the down payment, could they afford it? What could they afford? And this guy worked with that dad and helped me solve that problem. And usually it doesn't work out quite as easy as that, but for me to have a prayer answered like that is just, it's amazing. I mean, that's what keeps me going and keeps the passion alive. But the situations that I hear and I deal with low-income families are just really, truly heartbreaking. Today, there's a little girl in there. You may have heard the story. It was on Wave 3 News, but there's a little girl in Fairdale, and she goes to Fairdale Elementary, and her father died in a car accident on this past Sunday. Oh. And she and her mom had a bake sale, and they were selling baked items in their front yard to help pay for the funeral. And she was interviewed saying that I wanted to bake because my dad loved it when we made these special strawberry cookies, and I think they were strawberry, but he liked cookies and he loved when I helped my mom bake. And so we're doing this to help. And, I know my mom needs money for the funeral. And so they haven't even had the funeral yet. They did have a GoFundMe page set up that somebody else had set up for them. And so I think the money is coming in pretty good to help them with the funeral. But, if you're in a position where the mom, and he was the sole breadwinner in the house, and there are 3 children. So what happened is the Fairdale coordinator called me. I'm her mentor. She's been doing this just a year or so. And she said, what other resources are there for funerals? What else can I tap into? So I was sharing the list that I've kind of kept over the years with her. And we don't have to talk about those here, but just sharing those resources with her about what she can say to the family and how she can help donate. Because a lot of times people will call the school, in that she had sent me the article, and in the article it just mentioned it was a 4th grader at Fairdale. So she was getting some phone calls from the school, and she really didn't know what to say or how to handle that. And so we were talking about how you get donations from the community and how you can truly help that family. And so what I mean by that is we have some hidden rules, I guess you should say. They're rules that we don't really say publicly to our clients and to our families, but that is that we don't actually give them money. We never just give the mom $400 and say, here, go for it, go pay the bill. We will actually pay the funeral bill, or we will pay the electric bill. We'll give the money to LG&E instead of giving it to the family, for lots of reasons. That
Sure.
How do people in the community donate that hear this story and want to reach out and want to support?
Mm-hmm.
How do they do that?
So the best way, depending on what it is, if it is a fire, it goes to one place. If it is a funeral, it always goes to the funeral home. You can always go and donate to that funeral home. You can look up Arch Hetty, you can look up Craft Funeral Home, and you can send a check straight to them, or call them up and ask them for a credit card payment. But the funeral homes will always take donations for families. But depending on what it is, like if it's a fire, then in Louisville, they can call us at the school, they can call the Family Resource Center, or a lot of times they'll call the fire department, and the fire department will tell them how to donate. We're blessed in this community that we have a ton of resources. And even in Southern Indiana, living across from Louisville, we have access to a lot of resources that a lot of people in rural counties do not. Mm-hmm. Even between here and Indianapolis, people in Columbus have to decide sometimes, am I going to Indy for care or help, or am I going to Louisville for help, based on if the child may have cancer or may have something major going on medically. Those rural communities really don't have the resources that we do. So we're blessed. We have the American Red Cross, the Salvation Army, all of those things. And those agencies and nonprofits that you've heard of, like Metro United Way, those three big ones are excellent places to donate. And I can tell you that I have gone to all of those agencies and gotten resources for the families that I need immediately, without question, without a lot of hassle.
So you definitely see a lot of the United Way and the Salvation Army, and of course it's going to be more prevalent during the holiday season where you're going to see those guys out there. So there's somebody who supports what you're doing year round.
Yes, and my job is I even work in the summer. So I also work in the summer, and if I call the Salvation Army, those agencies, all three of those agencies are available year round. And if I call them and say, this is the situation I have, they will respond immediately within 24 hours of what they can do, how they can help, where the family needs to go or who the family needs to talk to. So the Red Cross is very similar too, especially when it comes to a sudden death or a tragedy like a fire or a flood or something. Even if their water pump stops working and the whole basement gets flooded, even that situation, the American Red Cross will help if you're low income. Sometimes even if you're not low income, they will help everybody if you're in what I call situational poverty. So there's generational poverty and there's situational poverty. Situational is like when there's a lot of D's: death, divorce, dental work. There seems to be a lot of D's, but when disaster is another one, and that's where you are in middle class or upper class, but you fall directly down because of some major tragedy, and those families need help as well. And that's what I've seen a lot of in the last 6 months with the pandemic. I'm just talking your ear off. I'm sorry.
So how has the pandemic affected what you guys are able to accomplish with kids not being in school as often, so they're not able to get that dental work or get that change of clothes or whatever, or that extra uniform or whatever, without them being in school? Has that been a lot more challenging for you to be able to care for the community?
Yes and no. I will say, we've had more families ask for help for the first time than ever before. So we have a lot of people who were middle class or just on the edge of middle class, and they were too proud to ask, but they got to the point where they lost their job. And these are people like restaurant workers, hotel, like over by where I live, I feel like I live there sometimes, at my school. I'm right behind GE. So GE didn't have any layoffs necessarily, but a lot of the other businesses around there, some of the warehouses had some layoffs, but also like everybody that worked at Jefferson Mall, people who work at the Big O Tires, just places that are all around in there that they were getting 40 hours, 50 hours a week. Now they're getting 10, and their income has changed significantly, and they're not making their bill. They're not getting their rent paid. They're behind on bills. They're stressed out. And a lot of times it could be that, tragedy too, like a dad or a mom tries to commit suicide because of the depression of not being able to provide for their family and things like that. But sometimes it's not that tragic. It's just somebody says, oh, you have a person at the school that might be able to help me, or I heard there was some COVID money out there. They say that there's a pandemic number that somebody can help during the pandemic. And so that's how we get connected. And I always tell people that one of the first things I say to a person who hasn't talked with me before, that, hey, Toby, if you, thanks for calling. And I want you to know, if you tell me the truth and you let me in and let me know a little bit about what's going on with your family today, I promise you I will get you some resources and we'll get you some help today. And, families really take off to that. So
yeah, that's amazing. Did you have some? Dave?
Yeah, I was just going to ask how, for families in the community that are part of your school, or maybe that aren't part of your school, how do they learn more about the resources that are out there that you can help connect them with?
Mm-hmm. At any Jefferson County public school, they can call that school and ask for the Family Resource Center. We're located in every school except for Manual High School, and that's because they have a very high percentage of free lunch right now. The rule for the state is you have to have a high percentage of free and reduced lunch in order to qualify to get a Family Resource Center. So Manual High School happens to be the only one that I can think of that doesn't qualify right now for a center, or doesn't have a center. But of course, they can reach out to me. I am Krista Campisano, and I'm at Luhr Elementary, Luhr Elementary, and I can get them to the right place if they need to. I know some of your listeners might be in Southern Indiana, and what I can say is the nearest program that's similar to what I do, it's not exactly the same, is Communities in Schools. But Communities in Schools is an agency. Their building is in Clark. It's in Jeff. Their building's in Jeff, but they have some people who do similar work in our schools in Southern Indiana, in Greater Clark, Clarksville, West Clark, and New Albany. And even if that doesn't work, you can't remember Communities in Schools, just remember that people at the school can help your child. So if you're in a situation where you're feeling like you don't know how to help your family and you don't know where you're going to turn to next or what you're going to do, reach out to the school and let that teacher know that you're struggling, or ask if there's anybody there to talk to. A good resource in Southern Indiana has been the school counselors. But a lot of times the school counselors and the principals will have some resources that can help families and get them connected to those social services. But here during the pandemic, there is a lot of pandemic money. It's come from the federal government. They call it the CARES Act. It came from the federal government. It trickled down to the states. And then how do people really get it? Well, they have to go to a social service agency and sign up. So in Louisville, they have neighborhood places. It's a one-stop type of place. In Southern Indiana, it's not that simple. But you can go and get signed up, fill out the paperwork, and get money pretty quickly. In Louisville, they were giving out $1,000 towards rent and utility bills. So they would actually pay the bill for you. That, of course, again, they don't give it to the family. They pay the bill for them. And a lot of renters who are renting, the landlords have to fill out the paperwork, or they have something that they have to sign. And many of the landlords were actually giving it to like I got a phone call several phone calls that said, hey, my landlord gave me this paper and said, if I fill it out, somebody will help me pay the rent this month. Yes, that's true. And this is how we do that. Another resource I use a lot is the community ministries. And so they call them United Ministries. And in New Albany, it is called, it's the not intramural, but ecumenical, like where they're all different. It's Baptist and Methodist and Catholics, and we all donate in to the center in Louisville, and then in New Albany, and then they get it out. So it's another community ministry where the churches will donate funds that they've collected and pool their money together and help families. And so
that also seems like a really common theme too, where there is a lot of churches that people can go to and for help. Do you guys ever connect with the resources through the different churches? And I mean, just like Southeast Christian, that's just a really a large church that do a lot of good in the community. So I didn't know if that's something else that you guys work with.
Absolutely. And again, we're that bridge to the students. And so, yes, we work with churches, we work with business associations. I attend a business association meeting every month at the firehouse, and we have businesses that will help out at certain times of the year. We work with community agencies like the health department. Walgreens will give flu shots to my staff members. So I'm the person at the school who asked Walgreens to come in before school starts, and we make a schedule for the teachers to get their flu shot every year. So, I mean, it's not necessarily just kids. It could also be staff, and it could also be parents. We did a drive-through. We've done a lot of drive-throughs this year. That's the new thing. Everybody does a drive-through for a birthday or a drive-through. So at our school, we've done a ton of drive-throughs, and we actually did a drive-through clinic with Walgreens for families to get shots for their kids and for themselves. We've had the community donate and put together a lot of packages. Like one of them was a summer fun pack that said, this is what your kid needs to know before they go to third grade or first grade or kindergarten. And so it kind of tells them, it had some educational stuff in it, but it also had fun toys like bubbles and a jump rope and so we asked the community to donate fun things like that too, as well as just basic needs. And of course, Toby's seen at Christmas time, I do a holiday assistance program. I helped, I can't remember the number. I think it was 48 families and 97 kids this year. And they got toys and clothes and sometimes food. We put together 20 food baskets for families that are, and again, you kind of get to know your area, and even a principal or a counselor in Indiana will get to know their school area. And we know where the largest pocket of poverty is at our school. And so does, Silver Creek. They know where the pockets of poverty are in their school. And so we collected 20 baskets and we gave it to those kids on the bus those 20 families that ride a bus that we know all live in the same area. They have very little transportation. They happen to be Catholic Refugee Ministries folks that came in from different countries, and they put them in these apartments that they own that are run by a landlord who I've had many, many interesting, strict conversations with. About how he takes care of the buildings and how he doesn't have a lot of heart for those particular families. But anyway, it is interesting. That's something else you have to do is you have to go be an advocate for families, and you have to go speak to the landlord and say, dude, what are you doing? You have to give this access to this family to get in and get their stuff if you want them to move out. Mm-hmm. If they can't move out, if they don't, give them access to get in. I mean, just simple little things like that. And sometimes you can be the go-between person that kind of calms the situation down and says, hey, I'll go with them. I'll return the key, or you can come with me, meet me there and I'll make sure they give you the key back or whatever the issue is. But those refugee families are interesting. At our school, we have a lot of English as second language families, and Louisville has been what's the term? They've been a compassionate, but they allow, what's it called? They allowed all the refugees from different countries to come in when Trump had said, we're not doing that anymore. And they called them certain cities.
Sanctuary cities.
Thank you. Yeah. So Louisville was a sanctuary city, and we still have families all the time. We have 500 kids in our building. We have about 125 that are English as language speakers, and they've been they can stay in the program as long as they need, but they're usually in the program for at least 3 years. So that means they haven't been speaking English for 3 years or less.
Do you see, we just came out of the Christmas season. Do you see many needs that are seasonal? And so I know there's a lot of charities that focus on, whether it's Angel Tree or making sure kids have, something under the tree for Christmas, and they help support that through the holidays. But now that we're into January and working through January pretty quick, toward February, what is it, this time of year that is the biggest need that you see?
Mm-hmm. Warm blankets and help with electricity to keep the heat on through January and February. You will be amazed at how many people that they cut their electric off. Now, We're in a pandemic, and they have said that they won't cut off the services. They won't cut off electricity or water. But what that also means is if you move and you go to try to open up, say I move from one lousy apartment across the street or down the street to another cheap, lousy apartment, and I ask to have the electric turned on, because when you leave, they'll always cut it off. Even the landlord there will cut it off. They won't let you open up a new account. So what do? Do you open it up in your grandma's account or your ex-wife's account? They have to figure out something. But LG&E has a program for helping hands, and so does the REMC here in Indiana. I'm just trying to be conscious of us living in Indiana here too.
Sure.
But REMC, and they both have a program where you can donate money, and that money will go help those families and pay down their electric bills. And right here in January and February, that's a big need. I will say, families have needs, and people who live low income have needs all year long. The needs don't go away, and getting out of poverty is very difficult. It requires a lot of mindset, a lot of change in mindset, and it requires a lot of patience as a person who works with them. But also, it takes time. It takes small changes, and it takes education. A lot of times, to get a better job, you have to go back to school. And so
that's a great point. So when you service these families and you see that there's parents out of work or whatever that have fallen on hard times, or maybe they've been in hard times for a long time. I know your number one goal, of course, is to service and help the kids, but are there also resources that you try to help connect the parents to from a career perspective or an education perspective?
Absolutely. And again, that's another component, another thing that we're asked to do, besides health services and helping families with basic needs, is to help families to get out of poverty. Our goal is to help children and families be successful. And so what we mean by that really is just getting out of poverty. And so a lot of our families have numerous issues that keep them in low income. Now, it could be generational. And again, if it's situational, you get divorced and you're a mom who didn't work for 10 years and now you're divorced and you don't really know what to do with yourself. Where do I get a job? How do I move out away from my husband? It could be domestic violence situation. It could be the dad loses a job, or like that family I just talked about that happened today, where a family member dies and they're the sole breadwinner. That's a sudden change, and that's where immediate action kind of kicks in. But generational poverty is very different, and we have a lot of families that are in that, and a lot of our refugee families, they don't. I mean, you guys, that's another podcast for another day. I mean, they just have so many needs that we don't even think of. Just things like that you eat at a kitchen table. I used to be like, oh my gosh, we got to get you a kitchen table. They're like, why do I need a kitchen table? We eat on the floor. And I'm like, you eat on the floor? I'm like, we don't eat on the floor in America. And they're like, oh yeah, we have a bowl. They have like rugs and placemats. Like, how we have placemats on our table? Well, they have placemats that they kneel and sit on the floor, and they eat out of a communal bowl. They scoop it into their own bowl and they eat right on the floor. I mean, and that's not something, and to them that was normal, but to us it's not. And so does that family need a kitchen table? Do I make them get one? No, of course not. So I'm learning as well as they are learning. I learn just as much sometimes, and they do. Another interesting thing that I found out here just recently, and again, I've learned every day. I've been doing this 20 years. I never thought about it, but English as second language families that are coming from different countries, they are very used to eating fresh food. They don't know what to do with a can of green beans. And I'm not joking. I had a mom just confess it to me here back in the summer. She was like, you keep giving me canned goods. And she's like, I love and I appreciate all of your help. She goes, but I don't know what to do with this. Like, what do I pour it in? Do I drain the water? How long do I cook it? Like, they don't even know what to do with a can of green beans. But you give them a handful of fresh green beans and they've got it. They know what to do with that. And so it's really interesting. So you really have to think about, when I'm making food baskets for families that are from a different country, I really try to put in things that they may eat. Like, how many people, if you're making a food basket, are you going to go out and buy quinoa or couscous? No, but that's one of the things they eat. They eat a lot of rice and beans. That's one of their staples. But we wouldn't even think to put rice and beans in a lot of our American food baskets for a family. you know, so you know, you kind of, depending on the situation. But yes, I guess I told you I was going to get off task a little bit. I do help families and parents with jobs, and also just talk to them about, gosh, I know, you know, I've noticed that you always ask me for school supplies and uniform clothes, and I call those Band-Aids. You know, I feel like I've been giving you Band-Aids for a couple of years. Your kids are in third grade now, and we have a pretty good relationship. You know, would you be willing to come in and talk with me about, you know, maybe you have a dream of owning a house, and you've been in this apartment for a long time. You've been in the same apartment, right? And they'll say, yeah. And I say, why don't you come in and let's talk about it? And of course, I've done it virtually too. Let's sit down and talk about your finances, and let's get you out of credit debt. And then after credit debt, we'll get that credit score up, and I'll walk you through how to help apply for a house, apply for a mortgage, find out from the bank how much you can afford a house for based on your income. You know, and they're working families. They're families that are working. They just have never taken that step to get out of debt, or and that's another thing that we can do that helps my kiddos at my school to fall more into a middle class family and really be able to support themselves and you know, better than they are at the time. So.
Yeah. Well, Krista, I think this has been great. I've really appreciated meeting you, and I hope, you know, I'm thankful Toby, you know, was able to get you on the show tonight. And you know, you're doing some amazing things and meeting a lot of needs, and you know, it makes a huge difference. And you know, you're showing up as, you know, Jesus to a lot of people, and that's very much appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'll be glad to come back anytime. I'm sure we can always get up another subject as we go along here, but thank you for having me. And like I said, my work is I'm doing God's work. I'm passionate about it, and I absolutely love helping people, and it's a joy. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. You have a great night.
Thank you, Krista.
Thanks.
Have a great one.
Bye.